Welcome to the Comics Coffee Metal Podcast, episode 38.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Comics Coffee Metal Podcast. I'm your host, Don Cardenas. And once again, I have a very long interview. And so I'm going to make the recommendations very quick, very brief, and just allow the interview as much time as I can so there's not a super long episode. Okay, first up for comics, my recommendation is, if you can possibly get a hold of it, the first issue of the Kickstarter sensation Beef Bros. Beef Bros is written by Aubrey, drawn by Tyrell Cannon, color work by Fico Ossio, and letters by Taylor Esposito. Beef Bros very much delivers on its name. It's essentially about a radical leftist pair of beefed up dudes who are just trying to do some good in their community and end up butting heads with pretty much any and all authority and predatory figures, those who take advantage of others and things like that. It's very funny. It's a very funny book. It's very charming. It's got a lot of leftist political views, and it doesn't seem as extreme as one would think, because it's really just all about taking care of each other, and the Beef Bros do that to the extreme. And as much as I liked the script and I thought it was very funny, Aubrey did a great job. The real stars for me are the art by Tyrell Cannon and Fico Ossio. Tyrell, who's been on the show a couple of times, is a buddy. His art just continues to grow so much. His figures just seem like they're just primed and like coiled up and ready to just pounce off the page at all times. He has developed a real big skill for drafting large figures who have weight but can just like move on the page. It's amazing. The sheer dynamics and bombast he displays is made almost otherworldly by the sheer vibrancy and brilliance of Fico Ossio's color work. It's like the perfect melding of modern comic book coloring and graffiti art. Just everything just explodes off the page in just pure energy everywhere. If it's any way I can describe this book, it's just like pure energy. Unfortunately, you cannot get Beef Bros unless you were a backer, or if you're lucky, your local LCS was a backer and has some copies available. I put in a message to Aubrey to see if they had plans to distribute it in any other way, or if everyone who missed out is out of luck until the hopeful issue 2 Kickstarter, and then hopefully that'll be a tier you can jump in and get the first issue. If I get a response to that before this post, I'll make sure to drop it in here and let you know where you can get it. But if not, just do your best to find it down. Find an LCS. Hopefully your LCS was cool and picked up the book. But yeah, Beef Bros #1, highly recommend. Well, okay, a quick check to my Twitter sees I did get a message from Aubrey, and long story short, nothing in the works right now. So yeah, do your best to hunt this down. Hopefully someone's putting up some decent copies on a website for a store or something like that. Just do your best to hunt this down. It's great. But Aubrey does have another Kickstarter happening right now that I think you should go check out, and that Kickstarter is called Stoned Master, the Stoner Kung Fu comic. The description is: a burnout martial artist and his friends defend Chavez Heights, Los Angeles from encroaching corporatization and gentrification. This looks like another fun, just crazy book. The art on this one is by Chris Moreno, who is extremely talented as well. So yeah, if you missed out on Beef Bros and now you're like, well, I can't get it, I can't find it, be sure to come and jump on the Stone Master, because it's got the same energy to it. It's got the same feel, like it's going to be the same kind of just fun book that you're not going to miss out on. So that's got 27 days left to go as of recording. So yeah, you still got some time to just jump in, be a backer, and just knock this thing out of the park. All right. So for music, it's been mentioned plenty on the show that I enjoy a lot of guitar YouTube channels, and now, much like last year where I talked about Ola Englund's Master of the Universe, another YouTuber has put out a killer record. That YouTuber in question is Nick Nocturnal, and while his videos are generally funny, or he's known for just like covering songs like ridiculously quick, and he's a very talented guitar player, and he's now shown himself to be like a really killer songwriter. Nick teamed up with a vocalist named Andy Sijek, and they are now the band/duo Termina. They recently released their first album, Dysphoria. It's very much a modern metal album with the super low tuned guitars and chugging mixed in with a bunch of like fast, dissonant, almost shred-like passages, anthemic style chorus riffs, and clean passages that are drenched with effects. And short stuff I really love. Nick shows himself to be a very excellent and well-rounded musician. The album offers up a lot of variation and seems to pull from a lot of different influences, and they kind of weave in and out of that pretty well, pretty stunningly well, almost you would say. The absolute same could be said for vocalist Andy, who, after several listens of this album, it still confounds me that this is like all the same voice, all the same persons doing all these different styles of vocals, from just some great clean singing to just low deathy growls to the higher screechier stuff. It's just same dude, I guess. Like, all right, go off, Andy. If you're a fan of stuff like Periphery, Architects, and the like, you'll certainly dig this. I think the opening track, Fade Away, is an excellent choice to start off with, as it kind of preps you for the rest of the record, shows you what they can do, and really gets you ready for just like an onslaught of just multi-talented people doing some really great stuff. Termina can be found on all the usual streaming sites, but as always, I suggest you check out their Bandcamp, as that's one of the most direct ways to support an artist. Alright, as said, let's check out a bit of Fade Away. All right, now for my guest. This week I have the indomitable force known as Jonathan LaMantia. Jonathan is a extremely skilled and detailed artist known for his crazy commitment to just drawing every line possible and making just truly beautiful and stunning artwork out of just the most grotesque of subject matter. I'm incredibly glad we had a chance to have a nice big chat. We go through a lot of stuff here. It's too much to mention in the preview. It's just, yeah, Jonathan gets pretty deep. He's been through a lot. And his perseverance is both inspiring and admirable and just mind-boggling. So, yeah, it was really great getting a chance to talk to him. A quick note before we start. The audio on Jonathan's end is less than preferred. It gets a little robot-y in a couple parts. I'm probably making more of a big deal out of it than it is, but I just want to let you know that it wasn't the best connection. It sounded fine when we were recording, but whatever my service that I use recorded on his end, it just wasn't all that great. So I cleaned it up best I could. It's still perfectly listenable and fine, but I guess I'm just making more of it than I need to. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention it real quick. All right, let's get to it. Yeah, I'm horrible. Like, unless it's the obvious stereotypical accents, I can't tell where anyone's from. Anyways.
Yeah, it's interesting when you hear somebody who's really from a place, and you're like, oh, that's what that sounds like. Cool.
Oh, like when I hear like a real Chicago South Sider talking, I'm like,
like
oh,
really soft Chicago accent. It's like, oh, damn, neat.
That's what it is. Yeah.
I mean, like I really love hearing accents, and that's the thing that I always feel bad about when pronunciation, because one, I'm terrible at remembering names, and two, I'm even worse at saying them the right way. No, that's not true. I'm worse at remembering them. So, yeah.
Well, it's a good thing everyone online uses their real names for
exactly. Yeah, that's the other problem. It's like I was trying to find somebody else.
Hey, it's me. Like I don't know. Like John. I was
trying to. find
I'm sorry. I'm Goat Puncher 427.
Right.
Like, oh, okay.
I was looking for somebody the other day. I'm like, oh, please don't have changed your profile picture because that's how I know you from. And
yeah,
I always feel bad when I update mine because I'm like, if I change it, then that's it.
Yeah. But you know what? No one has a legitimate excuse to like not remember your face now. So
yeah, well,
there's an entire account dedicated to it. So.
There's only 60 people or so that are actually following it. So those 60 people are really
better know.
Yeah. The one guy that's painting me. He does great work.
Oh, Robert? Yeah. Oh, he's a buddy. He's great. He's actually like 20 minutes north of me, yet we never hang out because our schedules are always shit. No, he's awesome.
It's funny because I know I've met him, and also it goes back to the I don't.
Yeah,
I knew his name,
been popping in at C2E2 the past couple of years. Yeah,
right.
He's a fantastic. He does a lot of self portraits and a lot of portrait work, and I told him like, man, dude, I don't know if that's in your thing, but like you love comics and the creators and all that. Like,
oh right,
you should do like if you do like what was the guy's the Schomburger or whatever, Rob Schomburger, who does like all the wrestling portraits and all that.
Oh, I mean, really, honestly, like just doing any kind of comics cover type things, you know, like the thing is like people really want, whether they admit it or not, they want comics with covers that have people on them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the bane of my existence because I will go out of my way to not draw people, and every comic for the last like 10 years or more, probably like 20 years.
People are overrated.
It's just people. And, you know, I'm like, hey, we're looking for comics covers. I'm like, yeah, I know what you're looking for. You're looking for drawings of people.
Doing things.
People doing things. And, you know, there are a lot of awesome comic covers that have people doing things. And that's always my thing. I'm like, I'm going to get drawing. This is the year I get better at drawing people. And I mean, it's an ongoing endeavor of mine. But yeah, no, Robert is great. And honestly, that I think goes for anybody listening. If you're moderately interested in drawing comic covers, get good at drawing people. For the love of God.
It's kind of a prerequisite.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I think the problem is anybody like me who grew up on like Sandman covers and like Dave McCain stuff and just the more surreal things, and you're like, oh, I not like looking at Dave McCain stuff. I'm like, oh, I could do that, but you know, like looking at the more surreal things and be like, oh, I can do a horror cover, I can do this, and not really realizing the editorial involved. It's like you need something that draws people in on a personal connective level, which is where the people thing comes in. And you can get away with not drawing if you have a name, and if you're known, and if you're not, you should draw people.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody should draw whatever they want, but you should also recognize that you're probably not going to get hired unless you can draw people.
So, Jonathan, you have probably some of the most metal credentials for any artist I've spoken to yet. And I really want to dig into a lot of the experiences you've had with that. But first, good sir, I have to ask, comics, coffee, metal, what are you digging right now?
Oh, yeah! You should probably clip that.
No, that you just cemented me keeping it in now.
I'm gonna do the whole thing in my Randy Savage voice. So comics, I actually took some initiative and finally got around to reading Weapon X, which has been on my to-read list forever.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It really is. I got the newest printing, and so I put this out online earlier the other day to find out if anybody knew where to get the original colors. Because I don't know at what point they recolored it, but it's a recolored version. So it's, not to throw shade on the colorists that worked on it on the new one, but it's one of those pieces where you can really where you're looking at and like, I just want to know what the original looked like. I'm fine with the new colors, but I'm really curious to see what the original pages look like. And I'm still floored that there isn't an artist edition of that yet. It's so bizarre.
There has to be something just with the fact that they're just not available.
Yeah,
somehow. I don't see how that's not been like a, I don't own any artist editions. Not that I don't want them, but I haven't had the pull to get one. But if they did one of Weapon X, I would have to sell whatever I gotta sell, before I can get that.
It's kind of amazing to read something that, like, I've seen, so many pictures of it, and I've seen, the Wolverine movies, and having an image of what it is already, and then reading the story, it's like, man, this must have fucking blown people's minds when it came out, and I know it did, and it is really cool to go back and read something for the first time that was this seminal piece of work that when it came out was just life-changing for people. There's a lot of comics that are like that, that don't even get the same kind of recognition. But it's really neat to see that. And it's at the same time, it's weird that they're recolored, but I also understand why they're recolored.
You're printing it on glossier paper.
There's stuff,
I'm looking at my edition that I have, and it doesn't say it's been like there's a new colorist. It says there's been color
color restorations, art and color restorations. Yeah, and there's like that fuzziness that goes around the colors. Like if you go and look up the original colors, I think they're harder. And I think some of the hues are just different. And it's like you're printing stuff on newsprint. It's just going to go different.
I actually have a couple issues of the original version, like these really like beat up, torn issues I probably got for like $25 that aren't worth anything. But of the Marvel Comics Presents issues that it was in, and I don't remember the colors being too far off that. But like you said.
Yeah, I'd love to see a side by side of a like a 1 or 2 pages. I mean, they actually might not be terribly different, but it's just like in my mind they're like like Killing Joke different. The coloring of the Killing Joke is like famously different.
If I could say anything, like there is, you can tell there's been some like digital manipulation on these, and it's not the most egregious job, because there's been plenty, like you just brought up Killing Joke. Yeah. There's been plenty of like just terrible recolors, and not to speak on skill or ability of the person doing it.
I don't even mind the Killing Joke recolors. I know that people were like livid about it, but it's like messing with something that didn't need to be messed with. Right. I just thought it was weird. It's like, it's an interesting choice. Like it's doing about these choices.
It's doing the special edition of Star Wars when you didn't need to.
Right. Like, really, George? That's your choice. Yeah. Okay.
That's what we really needed here. Okay. We needed like this gradient map over here. Okay. So yeah, I would kill if not for an artist edition, like if Marvel just put out less like a newsprint edition of a trade with the original colors.
What's kind of
like all those old people would be just like drooling all over it.
Part of me also believes that all of these things are designed to make people passionate about the thing again. Because, until the new thing comes out that's got something different, you don't realize how much you want this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, like Star Wars is always going to have Star Wars fans, but like it galvanized Star Wars fans against the new versions. And like you have these things that like, and, for better or worse, and, it sort of reinvigorates the market a little bit for the original thing and for whatever edition comes next and for curiosity of the latest version, because people still want to hate watch stuff or read or whatever. And it's a weird thing. I don't know how intentional that is. Part of me is like, oh, they're doing it on purpose. And the other part of me is like, they're doing it because what they do.
If they think it'll make money,
I don't think there's like most of the time in most industry settings, it's like, it's because this is the cheapest option.
Yeah.
Or in the case of George Lucas, this is the thing that he actually wanted to have it and be in the first place. So he says. So, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I also don't give short answers.
Hey, I love, one of the things I enjoy most is hearing people talk about what they're passionate about and what they're enjoying, be it a documentary or a podcast. That's what I find interesting. Not even so much the topic. Like I like to bring up, Jiro dreams of sushi. I don't care about sushi. I really don't like fish, but that documentary is fascinating to me because they're so passionate about what they do.
Right.
It permeates any, just the whole experience. So
I still need to see that. That has been on my to watch list for 10 years since it came out. It's been out for a long time.
Has it been 10 years since that came out?
Probably. I know it came out when I was living here, so I assume everything came out 10 or 25 years ago. The Steve Hams episode of The Simpsons is 25 years old.
A while ago, I was talking about a CD from an album that came out, and I was just remembering when I had to get like another copy of the CD because the initial one like got all scratched up, and I remember when did the CD come out, and it was like 20 years ago at that point, and I was just like, oh my god, like I literally like felt my bones crumble
your bones
slightly.
Just immediately lock up. You're like, oh god, I could feel myself aging.
And of course, you're talking about Wolverine and Weapon X,
right?
And Barry Wondersmith's like seminal work here, and it's like
this
something
is like
I deeply love.
Book, I think. I mean, I might be off on that, but it's. Let me find my copy.
It's. I think it's over 30 years old, like 30.
At least. Hang on, let me see what the copyright is.
Yeah, we're both great podcasting here, Don. We're both flipping through our credits of the book to see when it was originally printed, if it even tells us that.
I got the latest 2020. Really, it's not going to have the original.
It says 1991.
Nope, 1988.
88. Okay.
Which is probably when it ended. Okay. Well, you have to do the math on that, listener.
Yeah. I think that's 33 years.
That's not what I'm here for.
So, yeah, and I just saw the edition I had was from 2007, so I don't know what year your edition was, but yeah, it's a legendary book, and I hadn't read it in full until I had bought the trade, probably sometime around 2007. Right. And, oh God.
What's weird is like there's a cover gallery in the back, and it's a lot of issues, and I don't think I realized, because it's not terrible. I mean, it's not a super thick trade, and it's not super long, so I really can't imagine getting this serialized like over the course of however long it took to come out. But that's kind of another thing, and people, I guess it's kind of weird. Like there's a lot of dialogue with serialization now in television shows, and like anybody who reads comics is used to that kind of wait, and it's really strange to have that not exist in any other area.
Yeah.
I mean, even with comics fans who I guess for all intents and purposes should be used to waiting for things, they're really impatient.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of the reason I stopped going to like panels at conventions. Aside from the fact I was now tabling at them, but like
Yeah.
going to panels because it was always like you go to like some big panel with the writers like, so this storyline that's currently going, how does it end? And it's like, what you? It's like you got like 60 issues left of this big event or something, and you're asking like,
that's your one question that you get. How
does it end? So
and you
like,
want to believe that they're going to give the big reveal to their giant, multi-book event.
So hundreds of people in a panel they're gonna you're gonna say, oh well,
I'm glad you asked. I've been waiting to spill the beans on this thing that's been keeping my career going for the past several years.
Exactly.
Thank you, intrepid reader.
So yeah, that's.
But yeah, so I do feel like so the other thing that I have been reading is or that I just started because I got a couple of things, and of course I only read two of them. Was Ultra Mega.
Okay.
Which have you read that yet?
No, but I'm a fan of Heron's art. I just haven't gotten to it yet. I'm pretty terrible. Like I have such a backlog of stuff to read.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to like make my way through that before I start getting more stuff. Though I have been like, thanks to Comixology Unlimited, I've been getting keeping semi-current with a few things here and there since it's available on the app after a certain amount of months, either at a big discount or like for free.
Nice. Oh, yeah,
quote unquote free. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, you'll probably get it then, like in a couple of months. I mean, it's phenomenal. I actually would kind of like to see it in a digital format just to see how the colors like read on a screen because I it's funny because Dave Stewart colors everything and it's always good and for a long time my joke was Dave Stewart was a computer program that artists would use and you would just call it like colorist by Dave Stewart because like there's no way no mortal human could color so many books so well. It'd be like, what do you use? Oh, I use Dave Stewart. Great, I use Photoshop. And I'm sticking to that still. I know he's on Twitter and
it's just an army of...
You can't make me not believe that he's not AI.
It's just like 5 or 6 guys all named Dave Stewart.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing. No, but it's so good. And yeah, I mean, Heron, who I also have not met, and I also assume is an inhuman machine.
Yeah, he really just like, came
incredible
and just like dropped like him and Eminem like in the past like I guess decade or so, like their styles have like influenced so many people and just shaped so many things. It is weird
seeing like like when you see, I mean, and that's kind of the like a good segue into the music bit of like when you hear a band and you're like, ah, man, I love these guys, and then you hear who influenced them and you're like, oh shit, this is the source. Okay, cool. And it's just wild because like it is so just bonkers to see like just somebody just going at it and really feeling at home with the medium. And I don't do sequential art. I mean, I try to, and it's still something that's definitely like something that I want to be able to do more of, but it's something that is, again, going, we talked about this off the record, I guess already, but going back into the drawing people thing, it's very much part of that. And you get to see people who are really just phenomenal storytellers and great at drawing people, poses, cartoonists too. I mean, Heron's like, Heron's an amazing cartoonist. You know, it's not like photoreal people. It's caricatures of people and expressions, and it's just like, damn, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's that point where an artist like understands enough about what is realistic or what the realistic forms are, and then they have the skill and practice to have pushed it
Yep.
to those more extremes to increase the dynamic range of the movements and things like that, or the expressions and stuff like that. And when you come across that, it's kind of like, whoa, okay, they got it. Like they've achieved
Right.
their form.
Right. And a lot of it is knowing what you don't need. And this,
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for artists who are just starting out is, over rendering. And I render for days and days and days, and I love it, and that's my jam. But that's a thing where when you're telling a story, you don't, unless that's specifically part of your style and that's what you want to do. For comics storytelling, there's an economics factor of, one, there's a page rate.
Yeah.
Two, I mean, if it's a personal thing, it's like, well, what do you need to tell the story? Do you need all this excess? Is it going to be covered up by a word balloon? Is it going to be something that the reader spends a second looking at to turn the page?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. And then you realizing, like, does this need to be 1,000 lines or just a blacked out space?
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong answer to that. It's all very personal, and it's all, if you can get it in on time, it's whatever you want to do. But it's cool to see people who ride that middle ground of a lot of detail and then knowing where to pull and just have like a totally blank space, or like huge amounts of detail and a person with just a pair of eyes on their head and like a little tiny face and no nose. And it's those artistic choices that are like, oh, that's brilliant, because you don't need that there. Like, everybody knows what a face looks like. Everybody.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And I think that's kind of the other aspect of art and comics specifically, that you don't need to draw everything if you know if everybody knows what this is supposed to be. That's you don't have to draw it unless it's like editorially specifically supposed to be there. You can get away with making something that looks like that thing.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see artists that do that, and they do it really well, and they do it that doesn't look like a cop out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the biggest fear I have with anything like that, is like, I try, whenever I see like art I'm really like inspired by or admire, I try to look for the little quote unquote flaws in it.
Right.
Not because I'm trying to say, oh, well, it's not really that great. No, it's to say like, no, that's okay. Like,
right.
It didn't matter that, this window pane didn't connect in all 4 lines, or, this one line got a little crooked towards the end, or, this face wasn't fully rendered, even though it was probably drawn at a size where it could have been, but it didn't matter. And for me, it's like, for an individual artist, is trying to build up the confidence in your own stuff to where, you hope that you don't think about, like, I guess this is a very long-winded way of saying, like, I don't want to end up like doing that, and then someone's like, oh, well, he's copping out, like you said, as opposed to it being a choice.
Right.
I
mean,
so it's like, where when it's working to get my ability to that point to where I feel like it does come across as a choice, as opposed to I didn't want to do X, Y, Z.
Right. Yeah, like, I just didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really it's hard to know the like the middle ground of what a reader will accept, and everybody's got knives out on social media and on everything now. I mean, I think they always have. It's just we're more aware of critiques, and like, I don't I don't know how people with books that are coming out regularly are able to exist on social media and really keep it together. I have a modest fan base that I'm very thankful for, and I'm so thankful for that they don't tell me what they don't like about my work, because that's terrifying to me. And like the thing that sounds the worst is to have a vocal fan base or just vocal readers who are like, like, I have thoughts on your work and I'm going to tell you what I think. And I think it's also great to talk to the people that you like reading and are really appreciative of, but they're people, they're real. They have feelings. And unless they're being terrible and just being like, awful about things, like, it's, I don't know what a good way forward on just allowing somebody to do good work and not leave them a shitty Yelp review just because you you don't like what they're doing on page 7 of the comic that you're reading.
I think that's what you kind of have to do, is just not listen to that and just because on average a comic artist is spending hours, almost most of them probably double-digit hours on a page.
Right.
And as a reader, you're reading in 5 minutes, and that's, people don't realize how long 5 minutes actually is. No one spends 5 minutes reading a page unless it's like a wall of Bendis dialogue.
Right. Yeah, right. I mean, I'm a pretty slow reader, so like it might be, but I mean, I'm looking at the Heron's pages, and he knows to let his art speak for itself, and that's great. That's the difference when you get like an artist writing and a writer writing. And that's not a critique on anybody's writing style, mind you, but yeah, like Bendis is gonna be talking more.
Yeah, well, it's just you're gonna be reading more,
right.
And spending more time actually.
I like that stuff, but yeah, it's
not a knock. It's just
reminds me how slow of a reader I am. Like,
it's the facts of the situation. It's the facts of the of the medium.
Right.
You're not going to spend nearly as enough time actually looking at the art page than the person spent creating it, unless you're a huge fan of art and
right.
You're going to buy the page or something. Then yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, I spent a lot of time looking at those Windsor Smith pages.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just you just gotta let that go. Like does their opinion matter really then? Like,
yeah, that one's hard.
It goes into the artist, like you gotta have you gotta have just enough ego to be like, well, listen, man, this is the best I can do. I think it's good. Sucks you didn't like it, but I don't care.
That goes back to like I give anybody credit for having a public profile and doing public work, because it is not an easy existence. Even if you're well liked, it's still.
Well, there's added pressure,
right,
to keep that up, right?
I started getting a lot of like Facebook requests, like friend requests, out of nowhere earlier this week, and I'm like, oh God, why?
Yeah, I've gotten quite a few new ones. I'm like,
it's really weird.
It's also one of those things where it's like I'm always like on the fence of just quitting Facebook anyway.
Same.
So it's like, how much effort do I want to put into this?
I assume that this will be the reason I finally step away. But I'm like, all right, well, let's see how this goes, because I've had a public profile for a couple of years now, and it really hasn't made that much of a difference.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like this week. And I've noticed a couple of other folks that have been saying they're getting a lot of friend requests from people too. So it's like something changed. I don't know what, but it's kind of weirding me out.
Yeah, it's either it's like a new bot farm started, or or there's just like a new algorithm in place that like puts your face in front of like all these people. I was actually reading a discussion on between a bunch of artists about, how to manage the algorithm of Twitter and what, like you post, you don't post links
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it'll drag it down.
right.
So you post about the thing and then you reply to your own tweet with the link there,
Yeah.
and then you like your own tweet and you make sure, you retweet
I
things
still,
with the hashtag, and it's just
you
like
know,
it's
I
like
still
wow.
I can't do the liking your own post thing. I know it's a thing, and
Yeah.
it always makes me feel like an ass. But
It's like giving yourself a high five,
yeah,
and it's like
it is one of those things like, hey, Jonathan likes his own post. Oh man, and I know that is a legit thing that people do, and it is absolutely a tool that people use.
but it makes you feel like a tool yourself.
Yeah, and I'm like, no, I can't do it. I will. This is the hill I will die on. I'm not going to like my own post, and nobody's going to see it, and that's fine. Here's my portfolio day post.
Yeah.
The same 5 people are going to like this post, and I'm fine with that. I love those 5 people.
And then sometimes, someone will retweet it, and then like someone with like 40,000 followers retweets it, and then you're like, oh, wow, I wonder, how if this is gonna get picked up at all.
Yeah.
And then
oh, no.
yeah, and then nothing happens, and you're like,
yeah. And that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and you've seen my stuff. It's that's the kind of thing where and I think every artist that is online grapples with the what do I need to do differently to get more engagement? And I mean, that is a great thing to ponder, but it's the thing of like, do you want to get more engagement, or do you want to have art that is satisfying for you as an artist? Because I mean, they can be the same thing. There's nothing wrong with being popular and doing art that is popular. Like, that's awesome. But if you're doing stuff just to hit algorithm marks, that's like I don't like, that's not what I started to do art for.
And what's the real return on that, though?
Right.
Like,
well, I mean, probably jobs.
Well, I
so
guess.
I'm not knocking that at all. I think that there's validity.
Wait, you get paid for your art?
No, Lord, no. No, I mean, if you have better engagement, you're going to get work, and that's kind of that sort of gross industry thing, is that if you have a high, engagement count and a lot of people follow you, not gross in any sort of real sense. Popularity is the name of the game. I mean, that's really it. If a publisher is looking for somebody that is able to sell a cover, they're going to get somebody that has a lot of people that are going to buy that cover. And much as I might not be thrilled about that, based on my modest following, of which I love, again, it's the kind of thing, like, to get those numbers up, you got to do stuff that gets the engagement up, which means you have to play to the engagement crowd or the algorithm. And
use the hashtags, retweet the hashtags.
Yeah, and that's like, I like marketing. I'm fine with marketing. I'm a marketing guy, but I like my art aspect to be different than my marketing aspect, and that's tough for me because I know I like drawing people and I need to draw more of them, but it's the kind of thing of like, it gets into the question of what kind of artist are you? And I think that's something that a lot of artists get into that question later, after they've started doing it for a little while, and that may be too late to change, and then they don't like the kind of artists that they are yet. And that one's hard. I'm really thankful to have not gotten super popular off of certain pieces, because I wouldn't want to be like just shoved into, this is the only kind of work that you can do now.
Yeah. And that's kind of something I've been, it's been on my mind a lot recently, the past few months, where I fall into the traps of like, oh, I should post more sketches. I should, but my time is limited for
Right.
what I can do art wise. And I'd rather tell stories than, like, as much as I love drawing, you know, 11 by 17s of cable holding gigantic, redonkulous guns and explosions, or whatever. Like, I want to tell stories first,
Yeah.
and so it's like I have to use my time to do that. But then you worry about the lack. Like, if I'm not posting sketches, are people gonna like engage with whatever I do post? And you know, again, modest. Like, I have a fairly good equilibrium between people I follow and amount of followers and all that. And there's no difference.
Right. Right.
Actually, if anything, I've had an uptick in the past few months or so, and I've just been whenever I do post art, it's just a panel I'm working on, or I don't have any warm up sketches or cool down sketches or you know illustration pieces that I'm doing, and I still feel the pull to do that because I do enjoy doing those types of things. But it's like, what am I really after? Am I after engagement and likes, or do I rather have like maybe less consistent engagement, but I have a completed thing
Right.
to
Yeah.
do?
That's kind of the thing that's really hard. And if it makes you feel better, is like getting outside of the like the more mainstream comics crowd and looking at some of the more indie, like even like past the indie, like into like the zine territory. And because I worked at Quimby's, before the pandemic, and that was like a really great bookend for me of my comics retail experience, because 10 years prior to that I worked at a comic shop in the Bay Area, and so like both shops had indie comics attachments. One was like a more rounded comic shop, but it was big in the Bay Area comics and zine scene. And of course Quimby's is like this seminal independent zine mini comics staple of Chicago. And being able to just kind of get a refresher course of what really matters for artists, especially for younger artists who are like who do not give a shit about superhero books at all. And it's great. And it was really something, it's not like I went in there, like with any sort of preconceived notion or wanting, like because I'm not really, I fall into this weird gray area of like I like everything and I don't fit anywhere. And I like I'm never hip enough for any scene. So I think I worked really well at Quimby's, but I'm always like sort of like just smiling and nodding and like, oh yeah, that's great, I love it, because I genuinely do think it's great and I genuinely do love it, and I have no idea where any of this is coming from. But I'm there to learn, and I think that was really excellent to be able to get that for the short amount of time I was able to, because it was a reminder that everybody who's in a scene is there because they're passionate about it, whatever scene that is. If it's zines, if it's mini comics, if it's comic books that are superhero based, that are dramatic stories, like it's and that's the into the music category, it's the same thing. It's there's always going to be the people who are the leaders who are like, I'm going to tell you about everything and you're going to remember 7 bits of it, and that's fine. And like it's really cool to have been able to be introduced to a bunch of different like really huge figures in all these industries, and see like there's like the Venn diagram that slightly crosses over, and then there's people that just are completely on other sides of it, and they will never meet, but they're very similar in how they act. And it's always fascinating. but going back to the social media aspect of it, is there's a homogeny that goes on when you are looking at things through that lens, and it's really hard to feel like whatever you're doing is the right thing based on that.
Yeah, it's
and honestly,
it's quite the mind.
Yeah, it's a soul crushing endeavor to be like, I just want to do something that's seen and that is liked, and that is always the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, do what you can, and then keep doing it.
So, John, I think that covers comics.
That's comics. That is comics. That's it.
So, I don't. Well, we also coffee. I don't think you're a coffee drinker.
I'm not. So this is the funny thing. I have to plug Rhetoric Coffee because Rhetoric Coffee are great. Is great. And they James is a buddy of mine, and a couple of years ago he asked me to do coffee covers for his company, Rhetoric Coffee, and I did a series of them. And recently he asked me to do another series, and then I waited to do them, and then I waited more, and then I finally did that. So I finally have a new series of Rhetoric Coffee covers coming out. And yes, I don't really drink coffee because I can't anymore. But I still love how it smells, and we like getting it and smelling it and having it in the house. And hopefully I'll be able to drink it again. But it's just one of those things, like my health is garbage, and I get too wired up. But I drink a lot of tea, or I drink some tea. I drink less tea now because now I'm having the same problems that coffee gave me. Yeah, I know. But currently I'm drinking a Sencha from J.S. Haley Company. And it's lovely. And my wife works in tea training, and so we always have a lot of tea in the house. And I'm lucky to be able to have some amazing tea that I definitely would not be privy to otherwise.
Well, that's good. You get the little bits of the ritual of the hot drink,
right,
and a little bit of kick and all that.
It's funny because I can't drink sodas or anything, so my beverage consumption is coconut water and tea, and I miss just the ease of things, and this goes for food too. And my diet is so weird most of the time, depending on how I'm feeling. And it's just for the sake of clarity. So I have Crohn's disease, and it's one of those things. Over the course of 15 years, it's just kind of run the gauntlet of I can eat whatever I want to I can't eat any of what I want to I have to eat or drink this specific thing, and be careful of this. And I have been very fortunate to have a good couple of years where it's it's okay, it's a little rocky, but it is what it is, kind of thing. But yeah, the food and beverage portion of existing is always difficult.
It's and kudos to you, because you've always had a real positive outlook on things, even when you've had the real bad times.
Yeah,
you've always come across very positive, and it sucks that you got this thing that just makes just the daily things so inconvenient.
It's weird. I mean, I'm this is also kind of the weird part. I'm really glad I got diagnosed when I was younger, and that's not. I mean, that's definitely not how I felt when I was younger, because it sucked. But a lot of the the health issues, because it's like Crohn's, and then like kind of a laundry list because it's an autoimmune thing. So all my other stuff, like it's like, hey, I'm gonna fall apart now. But the kind of the compilation of greatest hits that happens over the couple of years, and it really wound up priming me for staying home for a long period of time. And it, like when the pandemic happened, and it was like, all right, well, everybody's going to be sequestered at home for a while, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll do this again. And I mean, it's sucky beyond belief, but it's also something that I was like weirdly ready for, and I don't wish that kind of thing on anybody, but it's also the kind of thing like I am really thankful that it wasn't such a system shock. And I'm also really thankful that I managed to thus far not have any other huge health concerns. Because I know some people who were still having to go out and have their stuff looked at. And, it's health is something that is so difficult to, I think really appreciate when you have it, and when you don't, it's a real weird thing. Like there's not really a good way to explain. Like my general mood of it is like, well, it's working now, so I'm going to have to try to make the best of it. So, and a lot of that comes out in my art as far as, going back to the like why I do what I do, like the kind of work, like I don't want to really sink a lot of time into stuff I don't really believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And sequential storytelling wise, I wish I was more adept to that, because I would love to have a better shorthand to be able to just crank out story pages, because there's awesome stories to be told, but it's the kind of thing like knowing that I might not be able to finish something halfway through is always kind of terrifying for me. And for a long time, I would like want to get things done in one sitting, which I don't think is necessarily just a me thing. I've talked to a lot of artists who are like, I got to draw something. It's got to be done in like 20 minutes, and then, like my attention span, a lot of times if I post a detailed piece, somebody will like, oh, that's amazing. I wish I had the attention to be able to do that. And I'm like, yeah, I have the worst attention span in the world. It's just getting used to the fact that I will draw like 15 minutes and then like go get distracted by something and then go back and draw for another 15 minutes and then just, keep doing that. And it's less about the attention and more about the getting comfortable with however you work.
Yeah, I can sympathize with that for sure.
It sucks. And yeah, I mean, you've got kids, like it's, like however your work station is just being comfortable with that. And, that goes into health. It goes into, your family situation, your living situation. Just work with what you got. And it's, try not to beat yourself up over it, because everybody's thing is going to be different. And it's really hard when you're like, oh, I want to be able to draw like this person. It's like, yeah, but their setup is totally different than yours. And it doesn't matter who it is. It always is going to be different. Everybody's situation is different across the board. And it's, it's great to draw inspiration, but when you're drawing and you're trying to get inspiration from something and you're like, man, I wish I could draw like that. It's like, but draw like you, draw the thing that you want to draw, kind of thing.
Yeah, the inspiration thing is, I've actually just this week, I have a bad habit, or not bad. So many artists, we stay up late, right?
Yeah. Yep.
We don't unless you have the 9 to 5 job, and even then, you're still kind of like sacrifice the sleep to get the work done. So me being one of those people, I've, crept it back as far as I could, but it still wasn't working. So I just recently said, okay, you know what? Instead of staying up past midnight, I'm going to go to bed well before midnight. And I'm going to wake up at 5 in the morning.
Oh, God.
And I'm going to grab my cup of coffee and sit down at my desk. I have, on average, at least a couple hours before everybody else in the house wakes up. And I'm going to get some work done. And, it goes from like, I'm not going to be inspired to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, but I'm to sit my ass down and I'm to start drawing. Because to get that work done, efficiently, like that's just what I got to do. And, the couple of times I've done it so far this week, I've definitely, you feel better because one, I may be a little groggy starting the day, but I'm not at the tail end of my energy cycle.
Right.
Oh,
that's great. I was actually waiting for you to be like, yeah, I tried it and it sucked and I couldn't do it.
In a week, I may be speaking a different story, but
No, I mean
I'm trying. Yeah, well, they say my wife keeps reminding me like it takes like 3 weeks to like make or break a habit,
right?
Roughly. So I'm like, well, I'm gonna give it 3 weeks, and see how that works. And it's kind of hard to argue with, today being the literal third day of this. It's kind of hard. it's hard to argue with progress and productivity when it actually is
that's
working.
Cool. No, that's awesome. I'm definitely a night person. But I also have had those brief interludes of like waking up really early, going to bed at a reasonable hour, and it's like, oh, this is what that's like. Yeah. Okay, cool. And it's definitely a thing. The problem for me is like being freelance because I do motion graphics as my the thing that allows me to do the other things that don't pay.
I wanted to bring that up because you've done some really cool stuff for some comics with the motion graphics and all that. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so like that's really the thing is I've been doing that for like 11 years now, 12 years. And I did video work before that. I'm I kind of grew up being more of a film and video guy, and I always wanted to be in film production and be a director. And then I got diagnosed with Crohn's, and that got downgraded to I'm just going to be sick for a while. And even before that, I wanted to be a special effects person, and then I found out I was allergic to latex, and that like totally blew that out. And now the hilarious part is on both of those counts is had I had the wherewithal to actually investigate, I could have gone into either of those fields, but they're really difficult and stressful, and you can be allergic to latex and still work in special effects. There's like the silicone molding now. At the time when I got diagnosed with that, there wasn't a prevalence of that kind of thing, or the awareness that there certainly is now of the other aspects of the field where you can do the art side, the design. It's not just about working on makeup applications. Like there's studios now that are like very much, like you can be just designing the makeups or just on the sculpting side.
Yeah.
But it's again, young and dumb. I'm like, oh, my world is over. So pivot to something else. And again, that's the kind of thing that sort of shaped my ability to just be like, oh, so this is the thing now. Okay, I got to do something else. And, shitty as that was, it has served me very well over the course of my life because I've had that a couple of times now. And, adaptation has really been the thing. And I think it sucks to it's really hard seeing people in any industry or in any walk of life getting really stuck and feeling like they can't do something else because this is the thing that they thought they were going to be doing. And, you know, like if it's a job, you can, you know, hopefully do something else. You know, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah.
That for sure. I mean, you know, socioeconomically speaking, and it's, you know, along the way, I've been extraordinarily fortunate. And also, I'm not going to discount the fact that I'm a white male. So I've also been extraordinarily white and male to be able to
extraordinarily white
and to be able to do these things. So I don't want to come off as like, and yes, you can do it too, anyone, because that's a load of shit.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the thing of like I've also been able to look at it in the sense of, this is the kind of reason why we need programs to help people, because I would not be here if I didn't have programs that helped me along the way. You know, like that's why it's so important to have these things because, you know, like people get sick, people lose their jobs, you know, people will be working on something their whole lives and suddenly it's not there anymore, or they're suddenly incapacitated. And it's nightmarish to see that and know that it's not, you know, like for me, I was able to be like, okay, well, I'll figure out something. And I know that is not the thought that anybody else is able to have. And that shit is just like, it's untenable.
Well, you've certainly had a bumpy road to getting to where you're at now, but where you're at now, you've hit a couple really cool high points. I think. Oh yeah. You've done a cover for Heavy Metal magazine. Yep. You've done work for Megadeth, which I want to ask you about and hope you can talk about that whole process. But before that, you know, we talked a little bit before we started recording about how, you know. I
don't think I answered your question about metal. Actually.
No. We're getting to that.
This is the segue. I'm ruining the segue.
So yeah, it's what is the metal? We'll just screw the segue. So, what is the metal you're listening to right now, metal? Sir?
So I one of the things I got to give a shout out to Horrendous and Glorious Depravity and St. Vitus Bar. They recently had a show, and so I kind of de facto was listening to them. But I also just like their stuff's awesome, and it's kind of funny because like I end up listening to stuff just because like I end up having like not having to but getting to work on it, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm a big fan. It's like, oh yeah, you get to work on something. It's like, yeah, but you know, yeah, but also yeah, and so the heavy metal thing came about, you know, and this is just like I love comic conventions. I started doing them when I worked at the shop in Berkeley, and the shop was called Comic Relief, and it was a real staple of the Bay Area, and they had a booth at San Diego Comic-Con. So the first comic convention that I went to was San Diego, and it was just nuts. And you know, I got to do that, and I got to do WonderCon and Ape. Back when they were both at different spaces. So once I got, you know, like here and my health got to a point and I was doing shows, and I did San Diego as an artist, which was great. And I ended up having a piece that I had done actually originally for Rhetoric Coffee, but I had colored it. And it was one of those things that, you know, at San Diego and New York, and really the thing that I love about shows is the possibility aspect. And, you know, you get that online too, but there's something about like editors are just roaming around and they're like, hey, I like this. I'm going to ask, like, let's talk to you. And it just like that was the thing that I had one of the publishers come by the table or the editor. I for the life of me do not remember what his position was, but he came over and was flipping through the stuff, and then they got one of the other guys over, and he's like, hey, do you own this? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, yeah, is this something that you can like sign off the rights for? He's like, yeah, I want to put this on a cover to the magazine. And I was like, okay, cool. And it's one of those things that like they've kind of done that for other artists. Like they'll reach out or they'll like be aware of them through social media channels. And I don't know if there was like other inner workings where it's like like I've been in the same kind of circles as other folks. And it might have been like, hey, go check out his table. But in my mind, I like to have it be like, oh, yeah, this was totally like a serendipitous.
Random.
Yeah. I'm sure there's probably like a lot more moving parts to that story that I'm really privy to. But for me, it was just like this, oh, shit, kind of like cool. And like I did I had to do the title mock-up like that weekend, like at the show, and then I did it, and then I turned it in, and then like nothing happened for a couple months. It's like, all right, we need this right now, and then nothing happens. Like, okay, maybe, and I couldn't announce it for a long time, and then I finally got to announce it, and it was great, and it's really cool. But and that goes back to the like. It's not a piece that is really similar to anything that I've done. It was a piece that I wanted to try something based on other things that were inspiring me at the time, and I wanted to do it my own way. And you shared it. You shared the piece on Twitter, and I'm still really proud of it. And it's funny because it's something that I think is great for me, and I don't know if I would have gotten like more traction off of it, like where my art would be now, because I love experimenting with stuff.
Yeah, and it's very different from your usual things.
But it was like I want to do because I've had like a bunch of different odd jobs. One of my odd jobs was low poly modeling at a .com company. And so and this is when I lived in Las Vegas, and like the early .com boom of the early aughts. And so I was doing a lot of low poly modeling, and I wanted to do this, I'm also a big synthwave fan. So I wanted to do a, like the sun rising over the mountain synthwave aesthetic. But I wanted to do it in a way that you would be able to draw, because back in the day they didn't have computers to actually render this stuff. You had to draw it to make it look like it was 3D. Like like Tron wasn't, Tron the way Tron was. It was like we're gonna paint things so they look like Tron.
Didn't they like hand draw over the like cells?
Right. And so I wanted to do something like that. So like I did all the drawing in ink, and you can see like where my hand grazed the ink, so it smudges a little bit. And then I colored it digitally because I'm a cop out, and that's as far as I go with wanting to go with traditional anything. Not that I think digital coloring is a cop out. I think it's incredibly difficult, and it's something I'm still learning.
It's just when we do it, it's a cop out.
When I do it, it means, well, the reason I say it's a cop out is because I don't want to ruin my inks with watercolor I can only paint in watercolor because I can't do the fumes of any of the other paints, which is a whole other conversation. But So that piece was like, it was such a weird journey because it was also originally for the black and white version was for the coffee bags, and then I did the colors really just for me because I don't usually envision my work in color until I get done with it. I'm like, yeah, this needs to be in color, or unless there's like, yeah, this piece needs to be in color. And so that was one of those pieces that was such a cool like amalgam of for something. And yeah, and I should mention that like the great thing about the Red Earth Coffee agreement was like it's I was able to draw whatever I wanted, and I got to own it, and they let me have free creative reign, and it was a shared like a you can clip me stumbling through this. It was a shared agreement where they reprinted what I did, and I could do whatever I want with it later. And so, when it came time to be like, hey, do you own this? I could answer, yes, I did. And that was really great. And I think that's the hard thing about, like artists who do a lot of fan art. Again, not knocking fan art, but if it comes to the point of like being able to showcase whatever your work is without having to worry about IP and intellectual property of somebody else, I wouldn't be where I was at today if I was doing a lot of fan art. Now, granted, I'm also not super well known, so take that for what it's worth. Because I also recognize that fan art gets you noticed, and hilariously, also fan art gets you jobs too. So this is not a.
It's just the waters are so muddy. What do you do? What do you do? So you just got to do what makes you happy.
Yeah, that is the thing. Is like do what feels right for you. And don't listen to somebody who's saying like this is the thing that you should do. But I know that for my own path, it's been real interesting because like I like doing fan art for things that I like, but the things that have gotten me further are usually the pieces that are my own. Mm-hmm. Usually, like I have another piece that I love, which is a piece that I did for the Thing art book, which is it's
I have the print.
John Carpenter's The Thing,
and that's actually how we met.
So. Yeah, and that's the thing, like that is The Thing. That's a fan art piece, but it's also like you can look at it and be like, I don't know what the hell's going on here, but I dig it. And I will find the long way around fan art. If I can take the indirect route, I will absolutely do that. And that's what I did with that one, and it worked out really well for me. I don't necessarily recommend that, but I think it's great to see other artists that are doing that too, that are successful, because I think that there's definitely, like there's something to be said for people that take the long way, and I really appreciate seeing that, and I appreciate the people that are furthering those people. There's a couple of the artist agents that I follow. Like their roster is like just like they're borderline fine artists at this point. Yeah. And I mean, like these are great artists, and they could be doing whatever they want in whatever medium or whatever they want, but they're using comics and comic characters as their medium, and for me that's fantastic. I think that's just as good as any fine art ever was. And that's the thing, like, people talk about elevating blank, and it's like, it's there, it's already elevated. It's elevated every day by the artists involved. And that goes for music, comics, movies. I'm a big horror fan, and that's, elevating the horror genre is a term that gets thrown around a lot. And it's funny because it's like, that's not a thing that, like you, as a medium, as a genre, whatever you're talking about, like there's always going to be people in it that are working to further it, to make it relevant to their own voice. And, it's like, just because you didn't know about it doesn't mean it didn't exist prior.
Yeah.
And that's a big part, culturally, economically, all these things. Like, just because it didn't exist for you didn't mean it didn't exist. Like, this has been here.
Yeah, and like you're saying with horror, like, there's people pushing things all the time. These people who are incredibly passionate about their respective mediums and genres and what have you, and it's constantly being pushed. You just got to know where to look.
Right.
It's kind of the thing where, when I was younger, and I dropped off of reading comics in the very late '90s, and because I'm like, there's nothing good. Like, there's nothing exciting me, and now, going back, I'm like, oh, that I've been hearing about this old book or this old book and this old book. I was like, when did this come out? Oh, around the time I dropped everything because it wasn't nothing good coming out. So it was just like, well, this is goes to show I wasn't looking in the right places, and truth be told, I probably was, not in the right mindset to enjoy those things or appreciate those things.
But, when you're young, like, I mean, not to say that age is the barrier for all, but it's a great excuse. It's the kind of thing where, like you don't necessarily have the bandwidth to really appreciate all the nuance of what's going on. Like, I still haven't read Love and Rockets, and I know once I get around to it, I will love it, because everything I've seen of it is amazing. But there's also like I have a dumb thing that I do where I just don't read something or watch something if I know I'm going to like it. And that's not a good thing, I know. But it also means that that's why it took me so long to get around to Weapon X, because I knew I was going to like it. Like, that's not a new thing for me. Like, I'm familiar with Windsor Smith's work. I'm, like, I love looking at his compositions. It's not going to hit me the same way as, Ultra Mega. That's a book for now. Like, I can read that and it's like, this hits because it's current. And, like, if something is being written and if something is being designed to speak to an audience currently, that, I think, for me, is more important than going back and reading a thing that was made 30 years ago because I know I'm going to like it. I know I'm going to like this, but it's not the same as reading something from an author that is speaking. I mean, it is. The weird thing is you can go back and read things that are 30 or 40 years old and find out that we've been saying the same thing for a long time. And when I say we, just like artists who have been asking for like social changes or anything. Anybody who's been in progressive circles have been saying the same thing for like 40 years and longer. Mm-hmm. And it's only now that we're getting stories and publishers that are willing to like really put that out there. And so now it's like, oh, this is, bowing to fan demands. Like, this, not really. It's just finally people are like, oh, maybe we should actually be trying something. And, it's like, there's a reason the Night of the Living Dead came out. It was about social injustices and like all of these things. Like, it's phenomenally mind-blowing to me as a fan of art when people talk about anything of social issue being a new thing or something that's forced. And it's like, you have not been paying attention at all. Yikes! Yeah.
Yeah, that's that kind of goes back to a privileged outlook on things,
right,
and having that ability or that again, just I guess repeating myself, privileged to like, oh, that doesn't really affect me in the day, so I don't see
Right.
the change that's happening, and bubbling, and the things that are being spoken now, and
And
yeah,
that's, I mean, it's okay to not be there at a point, like, and I think it's like once you're able to get on that train, like, like cool,
yeah,
the more the merrier. It's like
yeah.
it's never not a good time to get into that frame of
Well,
thought.
I think it's the fear of seeming ignorant to these types of
Yeah.
things, where it's just like, I think for the most part, from my own point of view, from seeing things from people who are in it, you know, if someone were to come like, oh my God, I had no, like I, admittedly was, privileged enough not to see this or experience this, and I'm so glad I see it now, and how can I help, and or what can I do? That's way more genuine than like you said, the pretending that you were
Right. Like, oh,
you were down all along, and things like that.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think it's also tough too, because like as a fan, and I say as a fan a lot, or like anybody that's been in a scene, like you wanna kind of come off that you've been hip to the whatever it is this whole time. And like I moved around a lot as a kid. Like I literally lived in 21 different houses before my 21st birthday. And so I didn't have a real cohesive connection to anything of like a specific cultural awareness. I had bits and pieces, and that's not this is not anybody's fault kind of thing. It's just like that's just how it rolled. But for a long time, it was really difficult to feel like I could figure things out, because I didn't really have a TV until I was like older-ish. Not super older, but like I didn't have that like, oh, I grew up on He-Man kind of thing, or like I had a vague awareness of a lot of things, but not the same sort of like really like thing that gets in your bones. And what's been cool for me as an outsider in that is being able to be around people that did grow up in certain areas and listening to them talk passionately about that. And so for me, I'm passionate about the journey, and I'm passionate about being able to share that you can learn more at any time, as long as you're willing to open up to it. Because that's really important to feel like you can always ask and always receive this information, and feel like you can do something with it. That's not going to be always the case with everything. I think the other thing is like, not everything is a problem to be solved. A lot of it's just listening, and a lot of it's just sitting with it. And that's the hardest thing to do, to just sit and be with knowledge that you can't do anything about. And that kind of thing wrecks people. Yeah, and I feel like I've had to do that myself, and it's something that like you break yourself down and rebuild yourself, and then you keep moving, and you can do the things that the things that you can do and maneuver, like put that towards your art, whatever your art is. Because I'm also a firm believer that everything that you do can be art. It's your practice. My wife uses that term a lot in her work. It's whatever you do, that's your practice. I like to use, that's your art. But there's an art to everything. And I think that's really important, because people will say like, oh, I'm an aspiring artist. Like if you think you're something, then you are that thing. You're just on the path to being a better version of that thing than what you think you already are. But you're here now, so that's great. And that's that's kind of the thing. It's like understanding that, like, as long as you're here now, that's great.
I think you've led the life that has kind of taken that into practice. You've had, like you've mentioned before, the constant moving before your 21st birthday. You've had, the issues with Crohn's and how that's affected you constantly. You're currently nursing an injury, preventing you from doing. But you still keep this outlook of it's like, well, it happened. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep doing this thing, and that's incredibly admirable. And it's definitely something that would have broken a lot of other people a very long time ago.
Well, I mean, I had a lot of help. I know that you plugged it last week on one of your last shows, but like, I got to give a shout out to Jim Terry and his book Come Home Indio, because that is a phenomenal book, and
it is.
That speaks to a lot of those things. And I, again, like, I've been very fortunate to kind of randomly fall in with a lot of great people. And I say randomly, but it's, like, if you do open up to that kind of possibility, it is random, but you wind up running into people who are also on a path. And it's really cool to be able to see that. And, it's really hard. It's been really hard to not be around comic conventions in that capacity, because a lot of people there are doing that. But I think it's also this gets into a whole nother aspect of the thing. It's like, not everybody can afford to do comic conventions. Not everybody can do them, but it doesn't mean that they're not as passionate about these things. But like, if whatever you're able to get out to, whether it's a show or not get out to, if you're just talking to people online, there's always people that are passionate about these things and are willing to talk about their experiences. You just got to ask them. And that is really difficult, to feel like you can ask questions. And if you're not up for asking, like, there's always books that have a lot of the answers already laid out, and or just have that conversation. There's a lot of great biographies and autobiographies about people who have gone through a lot of the same shit, or gone through other shit that's just as relevant. And that's, that book is really just a thing that was just like being able to be Jim's friend and also learn new things. And I really just admire just the tenacity of his art, because, like, there's something to be said for, just being the kind of person that he is, but also willing to channel that into the art and keep growing from it, because like, that's something that it is difficult to grow as a person and as an artist at the same time, because it's, like, growing personally is one thing, and then be like, I need to get better as an artist, because constantly training yourself to get better at this certain thing, drawing people.
That's a ton of
narrative storytelling
to try to wrap around at the same time.
That is a huge amount of. That's a lot, and I may be speaking out of place, but I don't think Jim didn't go to art school. I don't think. I may be way off on that, but I know a lot of his stuff is very self-taught and taught through learning, as on the job, as it were. And I don't dismiss anybody who's gone to art school, but that was another thing that was really difficult for me, is I didn't go to art school.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it meant that I was going to be making all of my art school mistakes sort of live on the air. And like, I think that's it's great if you're able to get that kind of education, but it's, like there's no right or wrong way to do this thing, whatever that thing is where it comes to art. But, and I know people that have gone to art school do not have it easier at all. In fact, they have it harder because they have art school debt.
Yeah.
I'm like, I do not envy that. But, there's certain practices that I really wish I would have gotten drilled out of me. But I've also had stuff that I'm like, I love that I do a certain thing that is specifically, I know probably would have gotten drilled out of me at art school. So it's a weird mix of stuff, and it always goes back to like everybody's path is going to be unique and different. And I learn a lot because I follow a lot of people that did go to art school, and they know way more about their technique than I did.
Yeah, it's kind of daunting at times, but then it's just like, well, that's not the path that I was on myself, and that's
right.
And in the end, a lot of the time I catch myself where it's like, well, I really don't want to do that anyway, so why do I care about not knowing how to do that if I don't want to?
That's so hard. Like that's such a human thing too. It's like, I wish I had it this way. I wish I had it this way. It's like, but yeah, that comes with all of this other stuff. And, their thing is just so different. Like you've got a family, you've got, these other responsibilities and other things. And you have your own life, and that's great. And it's amazing. But it's always going to be like the grass is always a little bit greener somewhere.
Well, Jonathan, as we're coming to a close here, we've talked a lot about paths, and things aren't exactly that random. Things happen, situations occur, and we end up where we are. And it got me to thinking about the path that led me here right now. And if you'll indulge me, so somewhere around 2008, 2009, I was shopping at Challengers Comics in Chicago. You know them very well. Great people. Co-owner Patrick was my first guest on this podcast. He was a guest on another podcast called Around Comics, and one of the hosts from that show mentioned their other podcast called 11 O'Clock Comics. So I started listening to that podcast, and then they mentioned they had a forum back when forums were still a thing. So I joined that forum, and I met a ton of great people. And one of those people was Dave Jordan, who another guest. And somewhere along the way, a couple of people from that forum convinced me to join Twitter. I joined Twitter, started following Dave there. From there, I've found from Dave, I found Kelly Williams.
Right.
And from Kelly Williams, talking about doing some art for a Thing art book, I found the Thing art book. And from the Thing art book, I found Printed in Blood and got printed in that book. And from there, I got invited to do a signing at Chicago Comics of the book. Who orchestrated that signing? I'm trying to think of his name.
This guy,
Mr. Jonathan Mantia, and
that was such a great turnout too.
And it was a blast. The six people who showed up were amazing, and like the 12 artists that were there.
Oh my God, there were so many people. I was so happy that so many artists came. Honestly, because that was the thing I used to do at the other shop, was I would set up signings.
Yeah.
So that was like my one chance to be able to like set up a signing again.
So from there, I met you, and over the couple years after that, we always at least connected a little bit during C2E2 time and all that. But then that led us to me wanting to contact you to be on this podcast tonight and to have this great conversation. So
that's awesome.
That's a I can't trace everyone I know as detailed as that, but that's definitely a path that seems random, but here we are.
I have a similar thing, and mine started at Challengers for the signing of the anthology that they had, and I want to say it was like 6 years ago. It was the In the Dark anthology.
Yeah.
And so I went to that, and it was like the first big like creator thing, and there was a bunch of big names who I didn't know yet. And I used to get pictures with everybody at conventions, and then I started doing conventions, and I lost all of my energy. But when I went to C2E2 for the first time, I went around and I got pictures with everybody. And I got pictures with Hilary Barta and Jim Terry and Ryan Brown. And sadly, I don't think I got Tim Seeley or Mike Norton, but like I got pictures with a bunch of people that, you know, and the reason I met everybody else is because, you know, I was also bringing my art around and I was showing it to people, and Jim Terry was like, well, there's a drink and draw that some local artists do. And that's how I got introduced to all the Chicago artists that I wound up knowing. And that kind of thing is, you know, like those circles they exist online, they exist in person, but getting outside of the kind of rut that you're in, because, you know, prior to that, I had my health reasons, but I wasn't really going out anywhere. And that's something that I'm looking forward to doing again once things are able to get out again.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't want to dismiss the fact that people can still do that online, outside of the circles that they're already in, like reaching. That's why it makes me nervous, but I like the idea of getting more social media involvement with other people, because I love the connectivity of people when it's positive.
Yeah.
And that, like, those kinds of stories, it's like every story in comics is like that.
Mm-hmm.
Every story in music is like that. There's like this one random thing where, like, oh yeah, I met this guy waiting in line at a show, and like Angel Onofre, right?
Yeah, I think we follow each other on Instagram or something like that. I'm aware of him.
I've done a piece, and I'll share it with you later. But like one of the only collaborative pieces that I've ever done, I met him at a record store day, waiting in line, and I met Daniel Warren Johnson sitting outside of a coffee shop, and he happened to walk out, and he was wearing his Lion Cat T-shirt. Like, hey, I like your shirt. And he gave me a flyer for his
Space Mullet.
his online, Space Mullet.
All my roads lead back to Challengers. There's a Challengers event, and I was aware of Space Mullet and all that. And then I see this guy with a bag, and he has a Space Mullet pin. Then I'm like, are you Daniel Warren Johnson? And it was like, and the look on his face was like, holy shit, what? Someone just recognized me? Like, and I don't even think he even had pictures of himself like on his Twitter at that time or anything like that. I just saw the Space Mullet, and I took a wild guess, and he's like, yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh.
No, and that's the thing. It's like it really is just being like comfortable with people, like strangers just randomly talking to you.
Yeah. There is one last thing I do want to bring up, and it's
sure.
You've done some,
no short answers for me.
You've done some work with Bucket of Blood Records.
Oh, right.
And I felt the need to bring up that one Bucket of Blood's new location. Well, they've been there for years now, but it's literally like a stone's throw from my house where I grew up.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the location they are at right now, when I was growing up, it used to be a pharmacy, and that's where I used to buy my comics.
I want to say you told me that. That sounds really familiar.
Yeah, it's yeah. I might have brought it. It's just
so
that
surreal. That's awesome.
It is so weird. And then the restaurant next to it, Taqueria Traspasada, a buddy of mine used to go there every Sunday because he would come over to my house. We would write music and record it on this digital 8-track I had, and we would go there, and every Sunday we'd go there and just like stuff ourselves with tortas and tacos, and so yeah, it's just like that whole like thing, and the fact that they're still there, and I think when we were going there, there's like these 8 or 9-year-olds like waiting on us, and now they're probably like grown men with families at this point.
Right.
But yeah, I had to bring that up because we keep talking about paths and this seemingly random things, and it's just
totally no. And that's the thing. Like the Megadeth book that I worked on, I know I didn't like talk at all about that, and you want to talk about that, but the like I did a signing over there, and they Grant and Jennifer are awesome, the owners, and they they hit me up a little while back to do some merch designs for them, and yeah, it's just these things that, as long as you're kind of leaving yourself open and your schedule permitting for these kinds of things, like I don't think I'd ever imagine that I'd be able to have in the Megadeth book, like they Mustaine ended up liking a page of mine, and so it's in the special edition as one of the gatefold pieces, which is
that's awesome.
And so like being able to kind of jump around from thing to thing. Angel, who I mentioned earlier, like he was in a band with a couple of buddies, Without Light, and they asked me to do cover art for them. So like all these people that like kind of it's not really like all these people that can give you work, but it's just like the kind of work that you like doing, kind of thing is, and I guess that's kind of gets back to the longer conversation of, but whatever art you like doing, do that, because that's the kind of stuff that if you do it enough, like people will eventually hire you for it, hopefully, and whatever you're doing, hopefully you like it enough so that if you end up doing a lot of it, you won't hate it. Let's be careful what you get famous for, kind of thing.
Yeah. So, John, I've had a blast talking to you. There's so much more we can talk about.
I know. I will not shut up.
But unfortunately, it's not going to be. Well, I like hearing you, so I don't mind.
Thank you.
It's better you talking than me. That's when I see the waveforms are a little too evenly matched when I'm editing. I'm like, too much of you in this episode, Don. So no, this is just fine for me.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'll have to have you back on once you're healed up and you got the next cool thing to drop on everybody.
Actually, yeah. So I've also I'll say that probably by the time this comes out, I've been listening. Speaking of Ashen Horde, I think I had mentioned Ashen Horde earlier. If I did not, I apologize. This is a terrible segue to that, but I'm going to be doing a T-shirt design for them.
Awesome.
That should be dropping in the next on Bandcamp Friday coming up.
Yeah, that should be it then.
By the time this airs, should be right around the corner.
Cool. All right, Jonathan, can you let everybody know where they can find you on social media?
I am on social media. On my Twitter handle is JL Comics. I hate that handle, and I thought of it a long time ago. On Instagram is my very long name, Jonathan LaMantia. And Facebook, don't worry about it. And my website is jonathanlamantia.com, and it's got all my links on there. And I have a terribly long name, and I wish it was shorter, but I like it. And
it's just fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.